Okay, share. Here is. All right. Hopefully it's sharing and everyone can see um, the Drupal book module screen that I have up here. And I guess I'll just kind of kick this off with introductions of myself. Bill Leahy, I work in University Relations Markup Group. I'm web project lead over here on the web team. Our team, has been expanding, which is great. And we're doing a lot of different things, working with several different versions of Drupal, several different products. And one thing that kind of has always come to our attention is, hey, we've got these PDFs, or maybe we have an annual report or a manual that we want to put on our website. And kind of thinking about it and going through the things, Drupal always has different modules that aren't necessarily attached to Drupal that you can add to do a bunch of different things. But the Drupal book module is actually part of Drupal. It's part of Drupal core. So it's something I decided to check out, look into, and it seems to work pretty well in those scenarios. So I guess that's, a quick intro of myself, brief introduction of what the book module is. And then from there, I guess I'll just start going through unless anyone has questions.
I guess I'm just curious, in what Drupal 7, 8, 9, is it core in all of them?
It is. I believe it was added to core even at 6. Don't quote me on that, but I remember seeing it in Drupal 6. So yes, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It's all in core. There has been talk about maybe someday it won't be in core, but I think it fits like a niche need that Drupal has. So I don't see any plans of them removing it. Right. Just jump in. Why the book module? Right. So yes, electronic documents. So we're talking about Word documents, PDFs, Excel documents, any document that you want maybe to upload to your website for someone else to download. They're hard because they can be a little complex. So people have to download the files after you've uploaded it. Once somebody downloads a file, you don't know what they're going to do with it. You don't know what version they might have. If they downloaded it 6 months ago or 6 years ago, they could have an old file that they're referring to. And if they have a question that doesn't really make sense, they might be looking at something that's, super out of date. Other things, I know there are a lot of free options out there, but some things, off the bat, you have to have like Microsoft Office unless you find some other free option that will, view a Word document. So that can be a barrier for some people. Let's see. Some of these files can be difficult to update. So if you have a complex PDF, trying to go in and change a couple lines of text might not be the easiest thing. It's difficult to keep track of, the latest version. So if you have multiple people, maybe you have a file that, 3 or 4 different users have in SharePoint and they're editing things. It's really hard to see, what the latest version is or what the latest update is if you have to, then take that file and upload it to your website. And then of course, these electronic documents aren't as search friendly as just a plain HTML web page. And I guess the benefit of, the book module is that it is putting this information in just a plain HTML web page. Okay. So electronic documents create some barriers. So these documents probably weren't created with accessibility in mind in the first place. So many of the files that we find even on, the UMass website would fail the simplest, accessibility best practices. If you were to take, I would say any university or college or large government institution, look at their files, whether they're PDF, Word, Excel, any of these things, you're going to find something that could create a barrier, and we don't really want to do that. And then content creators, when they're creating these files, they don't even in a lot of cases know how to create it accessibly, or they don't know that what they're doing is making it inaccessible. Then few people are even, familiar with the actual process of making something accessible. It's easy to go into a Word document, start writing up all your notes, but have you gone in and added your title, your headings, just maybe tagging some images with alt text, things like that, to make sure that it's accessible to the most amount of people. Let's see. And then regularly the creator of the file isn't necessarily the same person that's adding it to the website. So there's, unfortunately, silos. You have different people creating the file that hand it off and say, hey, put this on our website. And then, those people, whether or not they know to make the file accessible, or if it's just like, they already have a bunch of other things to do and they just want to get it done quickly, so they're just uploading it without even looking at it. And just some statistics. So I want to say this study was maybe from 2016, so I'm assuming the numbers have probably gone up since then. But 19% of undergraduates and 12% of graduate students reported having some sort of disability. So that's a huge audience that if you're not updating or uploading, accessible files that they can access or read with, screen readers or different technology, then you're providing a disservice to a large number of people. I do see something in the chat. Let's see. Oh, okay. Sorry. That was just a private message. All right. Yeah, so book was kind of made to handle these situations, right? So you're creating a set of pages that are tied together in a hierarchy. So it comes with, built-in table of contents as you start to add things like chapters, sections, subsections. You can add an appendix, you can add footnotes, you can add all this information into the book module. Maybe, something came from a PDF or something came from a manual or just a giant Word document. I guess the benefit of book module is you're taking all the information and just turning it into simple HTML pages. All right. Any questions on this before I head to the next section?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Just curious, do you think that this would work for like larger agendas, much more complex, or do you advise to not use this in this scenario?
I think it can work for larger things. I think, it's called the book module, right? When you think of a book, the size of it doesn't necessarily matter. It's just kind of organizing that content. So even if there is a lot of complexity, it's made to create something that has, 10, 20, 30, 50 chapters. Who knows? You can have a book that's 1,000 pages, a physical book, and the book module is meant to kind of replicate something like that. So it can be used for those complex scenarios, but I think it's always a good idea to kind of sit down and decide, like, does it make sense to turn this into a book? Like, is this a book type of project, or is this more, a marketing project that we want to create a landing page for, and, some more internal website kind of presented pages. I think with the book module, you're kind of looking at something that's a little more, I'll say, vanilla, plain. It's not really heavily designed. It's more about the actual text content. So those are also considerations that you would make, but it can definitely do, complex things. You can have chapters with, subsections, and then I don't know that there's actually a level of subsections that you can't go to. I think it just kind of keeps going down. We'll call it the rabbit hole. But it could, handle some of those complex tasks.
All right, thank you.
Mhm. Okay. So how does the book module help? Right. So the module itself, as part of Drupal core, is inherently accessible. So it just is based on basic HTML pages, which I believe a lot of people believe HTML is the most accessible digital format. it has a simple text editor by default and not much else. So you don't have the imagery or the heavily designed layouts. You have, you know, an easy to navigate kind of list of whatever the title is of each chapter within your book that you can click and navigate to. And it's just meant to be kind of simple to understand and easy to digest. And it's also screen reader friendly. So, you know, some visually impaired users that might have a hard time with screens can hear it read aloud. And also it plays nicely with your brand by default. I know some sites were kind of developed in different ways that have different styling for different pages. But inherently it takes your basic foundation of styling from your website and adds it to the book. It's meant to be easy to learn. So you can create a new book pretty quickly with a couple clicks. You add the title, a chapter, and as you start adding chapters, it automatically will create a table of contents for you, and it will start to link those chapters in a navigation piece on the side. So you don't have to worry about, you know, editing your main menu across the top of your site or some of your sidebar menus, because it's not part of the menu structure of your site. It has its own sub navigation structure. Let's see. You can add new chapters or subsections to an existing chapter. You can change after you've created all these chapters. If you want to reorder them and reorganize them, you can. And it's one of the very few places in Drupal where you can see all of the pages on one screen. And if you, for some reason, decided, hey, I want to add a prefix or a suffix, or I want to change a title on 19 of these pages, you can change all 19 at once, click save, and every single page will update at once. So there's not a lot of places you can do that in Drupal. This is one of them. Okay, and then of course, you know, content is king. Content is fantastic for search engines. Content is great for accessibility reasons. So you want to really keep it simple with some plain text, not too much in the way of design. So you're not going to need a hero image for every page. You can leave, you know, YouTube embeds, video embeds out of it. You know, if you're a writer, it's great for writing things from scratch, you know, just starting out with a couple chapters and adding on to it. And then of course, finding peace mastering the skills of copy and paste, because a lot of times you're going to get some sort of file, a Word document, a PDF, and someone says, hey, we need this to go online. And you kind of know, all right, 60, 70, 80 page PDF, nobody has thought about accessibility on this thing. So the time that it would take you to try and remediate that file, in my opinion, would be better served with just copying the text out of it and creating this book and pasting it right into that. Okay, any questions on that section?
I have a question quickly in
Sure.
terms of the documentation or process things where sometimes the visual elements are to support someone who's sighted. Do you recommend maybe having two versions of a document, one that includes visual and one that doesn't, like such as using book module?
Yeah, so there are a couple things. I think my first take would be, you can still, so the Drupal module, there is some flexibility built into it. You can still add images, you can still add video and some graphics. I wouldn't say too much on like the actual layout of like where things are placed, or, you know, separating things visually, but you can still add some of those multimedia assets. But I would suggest you get the content in first, and you can always kind of update it as you go, right? So the main piece is getting in, you know, all that text. And once that's done, you can go back and start adding in images, video, things that you feel are important to add, that do add some value to you know, sighted users. Now, saying that, because you're already including all of the copy and the information for everybody, one thing that people do, and I kind of have, different feelings about this, but one thing you can do is, because you're already providing an accessible version, is you could still upload your PDF that's heavily designed and laid out so that sighted users can see that, download it, and kind of get maybe that broader, visual element that you're hoping to portray. But just having the basic content there for everyone makes it accessible, and you're just adding the alternative of the PDF.
Can I jump in for a second, Bill?
Sure.
Generally in the disability space, I feel like a lot of our community prefers not to have a second version of things because it feels like a pretty negative, separate but equal. And so what Bill is saying is like have it all together. In general, when there is a second version, it's often like not updated as well, and it feels kind of like a backdoor ramp to something as opposed to being included and thought of from the beginning of the process, which seems like this lets you do.
Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so where do we start? Now that everyone wants to try the book module, I'm sure. So just turning it on. So it does ship with Drupal out of the box. It's disabled out of the box also. It's not turned on by default. So most likely your site has it, and somebody that just has permission to enable modules would need to turn it on. So the basic functionality doesn't really require a designer or developer once it is turned on. But if you do want to kind of build out on it, if you do have a designer or a developer on your staff, you can add different fields to this content piece. All right, and here's my mandatory disclaimer. So before you enable any modules on a live site, you really want to test it out on your development site if you have one. It should work because it's part of Drupal core, but it's always a good idea to back up your site and save it before you enable any modules on a production site. So if anything bad happens, Bill didn't tell you to turn that on. All right, so I was hoping to try and do a little bit of a quick live demo. I know it doesn't always work great, but we'll see. So I'm just going to head over to Simply Test Me and we'll try it out. I'll exit out here for a second. Open this. All right. So if anyone hasn't tried the Simple Test Me website, it's basically just a Drupal sandbox where you can spin up kind of a fake Drupal website and test out some things. So I'm just going to say maybe Drupal core version 9, because that's the latest that we're using on campus. And we're going to launch our sandbox. Sometimes it does take a couple minutes. Hoping it goes pretty quickly today. If anyone has any questions, now's a great time while we're waiting for this to pop up. Or if anyone wants to see the picture of that, cute little pug puppy that I had on my slide, I'm happy to go back to that.
Hey, Bill, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
And I missed Elizabeth's question, so I hope I'm not repeating it, but I'm wondering, like things like annual reports, there's always a big argument, oh, it should be a PDF, and that's why people are very wed to the PDFs. Do you think the book module could be kind of extended into that kind of lane of annual reports, or is that a little bit more specialized?
I want, this is a very opinionated answer, but my thought on an annual report is, in a lot of cases, the annual report is meant to kind of promote something that the school or college has done over the year, and it's something that they want to share. So I would think that, best case scenario is you create something that's meant to be printed out. These annual reports that you're handing off to, I don't know, maybe a fundraising support or trying to get recruitment, I would think that you would want to print off those, visually designed pieces to promote that. I think if you really think that somebody's coming to your website to read your annual report, whether it's, in a PDF or a designed layout, you might want to look at your analytics just to confirm that before you kind of go down the road of trying to build it out into the book module. Like I said, that's my heavily opinionated thought on that.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, so our test site is up. So I'm just going to log in. And on Simply Test Me, it's admin for your login. So the first thing we'll do is head over to Extend to turn on our book module. Install. All right, so now the book module is live. So the first thing we have to do is add a book page. And your first, even though it's called a book page, your first page is actually like the title of the book. So say book title. Here's my book's title. And then over in book outline, you're going to choose create a new book. Save that. And there you have it. That's your first book. From here, it's already built in where you can add a page. So this one could be chapter 1. Here's my first chapter. And then under your book outline, it will say book title. Parent item is book title, which is the name of that first book we created. If you had multiple books, you'd be able to choose which one. But if you notice, these were kind of already filled in because the module knows that you clicked add a child page. So when we do that and click save, here we have our chapter 1, and you can go up a level, which will bring you to the title, and also back. So there's this built-in navigation. You go back to the title. And if I had 7 chapters, all 7 chapters would appear here in the right side navigation, and all 7 chapters would appear here in the table of contents. So let's just say I wanted to create maybe a subsection in here. In chapter 1, click add child page. Call it chapter 1, subsection 1. Right. So it already knows we're in that first book, and it knows that the parent item is the chapter 1. When I save it, you can see it kind of visually pushes it to the side, so you know it's a subsection. And if I wanted to add another chapter, you can go up a level again to the title, add another child, and here's chapter 2. Yay, chapter 2. Save it. So here we are at our title page. Here's our table of contents. It's automatically going to say, hey, the first thing you should check out is this chapter 1 because it's the first chapter of our book. Click through it. You read about chapter 1. Oh, there's a subsection. Let's check that out. Cool. I read the subsection. Now let's head over to chapter 2. And as I don't know if you noticed that, but when we were in the subsection, it did open itself. So if I go back one, you can see we're over here in the subsection. And it's pretty simple, straightforward. And these pages don't really have a limit. Let me see. I'm just going to grab my lorem ipsum generator. Generate. So you can have pretty long pages. Edit. So instead of yay, we're going to put some lorem ipsum. This is a pretty cool generator. It's called corporate ipsum. Save. So now here's your 70-page PDF broken out into multiple chapters, multiple sections or subsections with all of your content that's accessible. You know, users are happy, search engines are happy. Whoever asked you to put the document online accessibly is happy, and you're happy because you didn't rip your hair out trying to remediate a PDF that's not accessible. So I mean, it really is meant to be that simple, right? You just go through, you add your content, and that's it. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I did have a question. I noticed that it was when you were creating a chapter, there's an option for weight. I'm
Yep.
not sure what that quite means.
Yeah, so weight is a common, it's a common naming parameter in Drupal, and it just kind of tells items where they should live in a menu. So you can typically just drag and drop items up and down a menu, but with the weight, if you're like, oh, I know this is item number 50, you can just add 50 and it'll put it down the list at number 50. So like over here, chapter 1 and chapter 2, if you wanted to add weights to those, you can kind of reorder them that way. But there is actually an easier way to order them. And I believe if I just go to outline, I go to outline and then reorder an entire book. So here's our first book called book title. We'll edit the order and the titles. So this is where you'd be able to drag and drop. And this is also that page that I had mentioned before, where if you wanted to, for whatever reason, change, the title of every single page, if you have 50 pages, you can just one by one go through, and when you save it, it propagates to all 50 of those pages. So you don't have to touch 50 pages just to edit the title on each one. I think there was one other thing I wanted to show you. So if I go back, so here's our list of books. So if I wanted to add content, I'll add a new book, book page, title. This is book 2. Check me out. I'm book number 2. Okay, so book outline, create a new book, save it, and here's book 2. If you have, a reason to have multiple books, I believe, if you go to outline, go to your book hierarchy, and you have this page that's just called books, and it will list all of your books. So you can have, it's like, I don't know, a library or something like that. You have all these books listed out, and you can go to each one individually. And the book module just kind of does all this for free. There's no overhead with a designer and a developer to create all this functionality. It just works out of the box, which I'm a huge fan of. Okay, well, I think that does it for our live demo. Unless there are any other questions or anyone wants to look at anything else in here, I'm going to close this and get back to the slideshow. Do you have a question, Jordan?
Yeah, just wondering if there's any, or even as a follow-up, any examples out on the web of a site that's using this?
There
kind
are.
of usually, oh, there are. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's actually a little bit later in my presentation.
All right, sorry,
But
I'll let you.
I'll definitely
keep
get to
going.
it. Yeah, yes, there definitely are. Actually, one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is just Drupal.org. If you go through their documentation, that all uses the book module. Okay, so I will stop sharing that. Head back over to my slideshow. Okay, so share. And we get to check out the cute little puppy again. Right. So for anyone that doesn't know, my daughter was born on the same day as our pug Sophie. So they're both the same age, which they will both be 12 this year. No, I lied. They will both be 13 this year. They're already 12. Okay. All right, here's some training resources. I'll just share the slideshow out so people can check these out. But Drupal.org has some, Acquia has some, OS Training has some. And then there was like this simple step-by-step guide from Dino Techno. Not expecting anyone to memorize these things, and there will not be a pop quiz at the end, but I will provide them after. Okay, and then final thoughts. Right, in my opinion, more people should definitely use and take advantage of the book module. So they're quick and easy to update for admins. As you just saw, you go and enable it and it just works. The latest version of your content is available online for anyone to access. You don't have to worry about someone having, you know, the PDF from 2 semesters ago that doesn't have the correct information. It's search engine friendly. Here's another thing. Just in my opinion, I feel like a lot of people, when they're searching, if the first result is like a PDF or a Word document or some sort of electronic file, they're just going to skip that. I mean, if you Google something, especially on your phone or your tablet, I feel like most people are not going to download that. They're going to go to the actual, you know, next best search result that has a web page that they don't have to download something. And then, you know, super easy to change things. If somebody tells you that, you know, chapter 13 subsection 5 has a spelling error, going in there, clicking the edit button on your website takes seconds, maybe a minute tops, versus if someone tells you to do that on a PDF or a Word document, you have to open the file. You have to make sure that after you've changed it, you didn't do anything to mess up the accessibility of the file. So it's just simpler and easier. And another thing, the book module works really well with the reader view. So I think Chrome used to have reader view. I think they got rid of it, but Firefox still has it. So reader view, if you're not aware, in your browser, right at the top where the URL is, there's a little icon that kind of looks like maybe a page in a book. And if you click that, the point of reader view is it gets rid of all that, you know, ads and graphic design elements, and it really just puts the content front and center. And since the book module kind of already does that, it works really well with the reader view in the supported browsers. And a couple of things. So books really aren't meant to replace websites or sections of a website that are meant, you know, to appeal to certain audiences for a call to action, or we'll say, you know, not just a call to action, we'll say like a marketing landing page where you want someone to come in, they get, you know, they find like, oh, you know, there's some sort of call to action that you want to click, you want to gather their information, maybe have them come back. It's really not made for something like that. It's more made for, you know, I guess as the name implies, some sort of book like that you would typically hold in your hands, like a manual, something that has useful information that people need that doesn't need to be presented, you know, in a heavily designed way. And then it's also not meant for material that needs to be password protected. So maybe you have course information, class information, a manual on how to do something, but you only want specific, you know, users to be able to use. Book really shouldn't be used for anything that needs to be password protected. It's more about, you know, publicly sharing that information. Okay. Oh, Dan just mentioned that Chrome does have a plugin for the reader view. Thanks for that, Dan. Okay, so just some common questions that I've heard with using the book module. So can book pages be printed? Yes, they definitely can. And in the live demo, I don't think I showed this, but the book module will actually underneath, I think it's underneath the navigation bar, it actually has a link that says printer friendly version. So if you're in a book, if you're in a subsection and you click printer friendly version, it'll print just that subsection. If you go up one level to a chapter and you click the printer friendly version, it would print that chapter and any subsections in that chapter. And if you went to the title page of the book and clicked the printer friendly version, it would have the entire, you know, 1,400 page book that you created. So it is meant to be, you know, viewed, but it's also meant to be printed, which is, I think, a huge win for a lot of people.
Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
does a content manager need to do anything to make the book module work with the printer friendly version, or out of the box do they work together?
So the only issue that I've found is when a developer or designer specifically puts code into their website that affects the functionality of the default printer-friendly style sheet. If somebody did something that overwrites that style sheet, you could have issues, but by default, it should work without any hassle. The other thing, do I have to use a book module? No, you don't have to use it. You could, all this stuff you could do on a basic web page. I mean, I think the book module just takes out a lot of the steps that maybe people wouldn't think of, like creating the table of contents or linking to other pieces without having to go into your site's main navigation. So you definitely don't have to use it, but there are a lot of good reasons why you should use it. Is it the magical accessibility bullet? Not really. I mean, a lot of things that are inaccessible have nothing to do with the content itself. It's more about the design. It's like the reading order of your file, the way that you create your file. And if you want something that's heavily designed, you're still going to have to create a web page for that. So let's see, can you view all the books on a site? Yes, I kind of showed that in the demo. There is a page where you can view all the books. And then can I still include the original PDF? So we touched on this a little bit. Like I said, I really have mixed feelings about this, and Sam mentioned that, it could make some people feel, like that's an issue. You don't want people to feel that they're separate from everyone else. So, I mean, you could technically, yes, you can include it, but maybe that's just something to think about before you go ahead and decide to do that for all of your books. All right, so here we go, Jordan, getting back to some books in the wild. So the some sites that are already using the book module. So Drupal.org definitely uses the book module. And then here are a couple examples of sites on UMass. Actually, I will share those quickly. I think, yeah, we've still got a little bit of time. So share in a different window. All right. Share my screen. All right. So here is an example on Drupal.org. The Drupal user guide. So this uses the book module. Here are their, they didn't call the first one a chapter, they called it a preface. Right, they have chapter 1, 2, 3. So this is all using the book module. And this is just the Drupal user's guide, if anyone's curious. So that's one example. Next would be Carbon neutrality site. So they had a, oh, looks like I'm logged in. There we go. So there was this task force that had a report. I want to say the PDF of the report was over 100 pages. So rather than trying to remediate it, I just turned it into a book. So here we have all of our chapters. You can dive into it. And I did add some, images, but here's an example of it. You can go throughout the book, tables, anything that you can do in HTML, you can do in the book. So that's one example. Another one would be on our new nursing website. They had graduate and undergraduate handbooks. So this one's designed a little bit differently because the site's designed a little bit differently. But here's the book. Here's your table of contents. And here are all the chapters. So this one, they did have, a designer and developer take some additional steps to kind of build this out a little bit differently than the default book module layout. But this just gives you an example of some of the things that you can do with book. So here's that printer friendly version I mentioned before. Oh, and right here, I'm not sure if you can see this, but in my browser, here's the toggle reader view. So if I were to go to, I don't know, the appendix. One level in. So here it is in the book module HTML. If I were to click reader view, here it is in my Firefox reader view, where it takes out some of those additional elements. So you're just focused on the content. And then printer friendly. So let's say someone comes, they're like, oh, this is really good. I want to have a physical copy. Click on your printer friendly. And here's the printer friendly layout. And Sam, I believe that nothing was done to this printer friendly layout. This was all Drupal default. Okay. So those are just a few of the places that you can find the book module online. All right. Share there. All right, and I believe that was my last slide. So questions and answers. So any other questions that anyone has? I mean, that was a lot of information that we went through, but I'm sure well, I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Yeah, Bill, could you speak to searching for content from Google? Say someone is searching for some content found in the student handbook. You know, in one case, the student handbook was uploaded as a PDF versus, you know, through the book module.
Yeah, so, you know, as I mentioned, if somebody comes to Google searching for that and the first result is a PDF, I feel like there's a high probability that they would just skip that and move on to something else. And if there were no other options, then it kind of leaves you with a few barriers. You have to download the file. You have to make sure you have the appropriate program to open the file. Once you're in the file, you're not guaranteed that it's going to be accessible. Versus if all your content was in the book module, you would search for it in Google. The first result would be a web page that you can get to. That's clean, easy to digest, accessible.
Yeah, it seems like when I'm speaking to a campus communicator who's producing a print publication and they want to get a digital version, they typically want to just check that box and upload a PDF.
Right.
And I speak about accessibility and that they say, yep, I understand. Okay, so we'll just get it remediated then. And then they feel like they've jumped that hurdle. But when I start to speak about how many people find their way to that content in the PDF form versus a separate page and give them examples, that seems to change behavior. So the more ammo I have for that, you know, actual examples of the book module, and maybe even cases of what not to do, where there's a handbook as a PDF and it got downloaded 4 times in the last year or something like that. All that stuff is kind of really useful.
Definitely. And you know, one of the largest things is people, even though they go through the process of remediating and putting up a PDF, there are still some barriers with a remediated PDF. And you still have to kind of take into consideration what happens when something on that needs to be changed, right? Do you have access to somebody that is aware and knows how to remediate the file after you've gone in a major change? Is that someone that you're going to have to pay again to remediate it? Versus, you know, I feel like anybody with access to the Drupal website can log in and make a quick text edit. Sam, you had a question?
I do have a question. I also wanted to say, Jordan, for more ammo in our system, the president's office is moving away from using PDFs in general, and they actually have a form that you need to fill out as a justification to use a PDF if you're going to be using it on a public facing website. So in general, we're trying to move away from that. And yeah, I agree with you. And I would love to gather all this ammo together, because the more that we have these conversations, the better it's going to be. And my question, Bill, is I'm kind of out of the Drupal game, so I may ask this incorrectly, but with the themes that we're using currently on campus, does the book module out of the box act responsively?
On the newer ones, yes. On some of the older Drupal 7 ones, I haven't tested it. I know on the Drupal 8 and 9 ones that we've worked with, it does work out of the box. The carbon neutrality site was one of the first examples that I created, and I really didn't have to do much. I think I might have played around a little bit with the block placement, so the navigation was on the left instead of the right. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward.
Which again feels like more ammo too, because sometimes PDFs read so poorly on phones, which is where the majority of our students are accessing our data from right now.
Yeah. And I realize that there are some places where they're going to need a physical form, right? You have HR, things like that. It's required that they have a physical form. And I kind of, in my mind, I always think, well, if you want them to turn in the physical form, why don't you just send them the physical form, like put it in the mail? We have campus mailboxes for a reason. I mean, I understand that it's great that things can go online and they're available 24/7, but if you need someone to fill out a form and you can't accept it electronically for whatever reason, then you shouldn't have an electronic version in a lot of cases. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming and checking out the book module.